It's Thursday, January 25th.
I reject these accusations in the strongest possible terms. It's not my values. It's not how I raised. It's not who I am.
Breaking news this morning, Patrick Brown stepping down as leader of the Ontario PC Party over sexual misconduct allegations.
Good morning. Welcome to Your Morning. I'm Ben Mulrooney.
And good morning to you. I'm Anne-Marie Meadowick. Can we do one of these? Have a good show?
Oh, we didn't do that.
We didn't do that off the top of the
boy.
show. I'm very superstitious.
I'm just a little stitious.
Just stitious. All right, hey, we've got lots of news to get to. Big breaking news story in Ontario overnight.
Yeah, let's start there. Good morning to both of you, and good morning to you at home. Breaking news out of Ontario this morning, where Patrick Brown has resigned as opposition leader after sexual misconduct allegations. So he made the announcement early this morning. In a statement, Brown says in part, quote, "After consulting with caucus, friends and family, I have decided to step down as the leader of the Ontario PC Party. I will remain on as an MPP while I definitively clear my name from these false allegations," end quote. The decision came just hours after a late-night news conference where he denied the allegations.
I want to say these allegations are false, categorically untrue, every one of them. I will defend myself as hard as I can with all means at my disposal.
Two women have come forward to accuse Brown of graphic sexual misconduct. The women, who would not appear on camera, tell CTV News the allegations against Brown took place when they were teenagers, and he was the federal MP representing Barrie.
The next thing I know, he's kissing me, sitting beside me, kissing me, and then I kind of just froze up. He continued to kiss me, and he laid me down on the bed and got on top of me.
A second accuser claims she performed a sex act on Brown while she was still in high school.
He asked me if I wanted a tour, so I went by myself. And then when we got to his room, he kind of shut the door on me and started making some moves.
In a statement, Brown's lawyer says, quote, "Mr. Brown categorically denies these false and defamatory allegations." Now, a number of politicians have already commented on the allegations. In a statement, Ontario Premier Kathleen Wynne says this: "It's a difficult and brave thing to do to come forward in the way these young women have done tonight. My government and I have been clear on the issue of sexual harassment and assault. In fact, our policy and our ad were called It's Never Okay." Ontario NDP leader Andrea Horwath releasing this statement saying, "My thoughts are with the brave young women who have spoken out to describe horrible, degrading and unsafe experiences they say happened at the hands of Patrick Brown. I'm disgusted and disturbed by these sexual misconduct allegations." And federal Conservative leader Andrew Scheer says sexual misconduct and sexual harassment have no place in Canadian society, especially within our political system. "I understand how difficult it can be for women to come forward under these circumstances. The allegations against the leader of the Ontario Progressive Conservatives are extremely serious and should be investigated fully." And just an hour before Brown's resignation, the PC leader in Nova Scotia was forced to step down over allegations of inappropriate behaviour. Jamie Bailey was the provincial Tory leader for 8 years, but the party launched an investigation after a person came forward with the claims last month. It concluded Bailey had breached the legislature's workplace harassment policy. No further details have been released. Where Patrick Brown has resigned as opposition leader after a CTV News exclusive report about allegations of sexual misconduct. He made the announcement early this morning in a statement. Brown says in part, quote, "After consulting with caucus, friends and family, I have decided to step down as leader of the Ontario PC Party. I will remain on as an MPP while I definitively clear my name from these false allegations." Now, this decision came just hours after a late-night news conference where he denied the allegations.
I know the court of public opinion moves fast. I've instructed my attorneys to ensure that these allegations are addressed where they should be in the court of law. In short, I reject these accusations in the strongest possible terms. It's not my values. It's not how I raised. It's not who I am.
A number of politicians have already commented on the allegations. In a statement, Ontario Premier Kathleen Wynne says this: "It is a difficult and brave thing to do to come forward in the way these young women have done tonight. My government and I have been clear on the issue of sexual harassment and assault. In fact, our policy and our ad were called It's Never Okay." Ontario NDP leader Andrea Horwath releasing this statement saying, My thoughts are with the brave young women who have spoken out to describe horrible, degrading, and unsafe experiences they say happened at the hands of Patrick Brown. I'm disgusted and disturbed by these sexual misconduct allegations. And federal Conservative leader Andrew Scheer says sexual misconduct and sexual harassment have no place in Canadian society, especially within our political system. I understand how difficult it can be for women to come forward under these circumstances. The allegations against the leader of the Ontario Progressive Conservatives are extremely serious and should be investigated fully. Now, just hours before Brown's resignation, the PC leader in Nova Scotia was forced to step down over allegations of inappropriate behaviour. Patrick Brown steps down as Ontario PC leader over sexual misconduct allegations. Joining me now is CP24's Travis Danraj, who is at Queen's Park this morning. Travis, you were there at Queen's Park last night. I know you've barely slept. You were watching this play out in real time. Walk us through what happened.
You know, it was a wild, unprecedented night last night. The media was summoned to Queen's Park at 9 o'clock in the evening for a 9:45 news conference, which really doesn't ever happen. So everyone was scrambling to get here. I can tell you that when we arrived at about 9:30 or so, the security didn't even know that this was going on. So they were as confused as we were as to where to go, what to do. We were ushered into a small room, and then we were told Patrick Brown would have an announcement. Obviously, it was a big announcement, we were thinking, but we didn't know what he was going to be talking about. He had that news conference. You saw the video right here on Your Morning, but he did not answer any questions. He did say when he was walking to his vehicle that he would be here in the morning for work. By the time I went back upstairs, a number of his senior staff members, his campaign manager, his chief of staff, his press secretary had all resigned, and that really continued throughout the evening. And then, of course, he resigned as the party leader at about 1:30 or so. So a lot of developments very quickly last night, Lindsay.
And Travis, have we ever seen anything like this in Ontario politics?
No, I mean, this is really unprecedented. What you saw last night unfold here has not happened in Ontario politics ever. I mean, you've had resignations before and scandals before, but a scandal of this magnitude with these kinds of allegations, no, you have not had that with the leader of the opposition party, the leader of a major party in Ontario. And the big question here is what happens next and who will take the helm of the PC party, because we're going into an election very soon.
Yeah, and that really is the question. You can hear me saying yes, and we're all nodding here. How is this going to play out? I mean, what are we expecting even today?
So I was on the phone late last night till about 1:30, about 2 o'clock in the morning. I was talking to party executive members. Everyone was up last night trying to figure out what was going on. Apparently there was a conference call. Caucus had a conference call hastily put together. Patrick Brown, we're told, was not invited to that call. He did go on that call with his lawyer, and there was some discussion about a second chance, wanting to stay on. Ultimately, that did not happen. Then that statement went out at about 1:30 or so. The party executive member that I talked to said that caucus will likely nominate an interim leader today, and then the party executive could vote to ratify that or move to a leadership vote. Likely, they will not want to leave the party in limbo, and they will ratify that leader. So who the interim leader is a question that we're wondering what we'll have the answer to, and also who the leader going into the election is. Another point I should make here is that Kathleen Wynne, the Premier, has said previously that she did not plan on calling an early election, but certainly it is her prerogative. She could go to the Lieutenant Governor, and dissolve Queen's Park and then call an early election. The game has changed, so we're also waiting to hear from her. She put out that short statement last night, but she has not spoken in front of the cameras since this news broke.
That's a really good point. CP24's Travis Danraj, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much for checking in with us this morning.
In a statement, Brown says, in part, after consulting with caucus, friends, and family, I have decided to step down as the leader of the Ontario PC party. I will remain on as MPP while I definitively clear my name from these false allegations. This decision coming just hours after a late-night news conference where he denied the allegations. So joining us this morning is CTV's senior political correspondent, Glenn McGregor. First of all, Glenn, this is a story that you broke. This resignation, all the fallout that we've seen in the hour since is because of a story that you first broke. Tell us how these allegations came to be.
Yeah, I think it's important to note, first of all, that, as you said, Brown denies these allegations. These allegations have never been tested in court either, never resulted in any formal complaint process either. But we spoke to two women. One of them was in high school at the time when this happened about 10 years ago. She was out in a bar with a friend of hers who knew Brown. They met at the bar, and three of them returned to his home later in the evening. She says he offered her a tour of the house, and when they were in the bedroom, he closed the door. And at a certain point, she alleges that he lowered his pants and asked him to perform oral sex on him. She agreed momentarily and then left. The other woman's allegations are more recent. She had worked for Brown as a constituency assistant. She claims that he, after a party one night after a charity event, there was a party at his house. She was intoxicated at the time, and that he invited her and a friend of his to his bedroom to look at some photographs. And it was there, after the friend left, that he tried to kiss her and climbed on top of her, even though she was completely unresponsive and not interested. And the fact that he was, at the time, her boss. She felt very uncomfortable by this. She later continued to work for Brown, though, it's worth noting, because she valued the job and thought it was important that she stay on, even though there had been this encounter that made her feel very uncomfortable.
As you pointed out off the top, Glenn, Patrick Brown said he's going to continue to fight these allegations. He denies them fully, both in that press conference and again at a statement that he sent out later saying that he was stepping down as leader, although staying on as MPP. The PCs here in Ontario are in the midst of election campaigning, right? They have an election coming up in June. So what happens next for the party?
Well, they're going to have some very hastily convened meetings today amongst senior party officials trying to figure out what the process will be, because keep in mind, there has been no leadership convention planned. They will have to essentially squeeze in a leadership campaign into that election campaign, which is, the election's only a little over 5 months away. So they're going to have to move very quickly unless they decide, unless the caucus decides that they're going to elect themselves a new leader. But there's really no kind of system for this. They haven't faced this kind of problem before, a resignation of a leader so soon before the next election campaign. Also worth noting that after Brown's press conference last night that you spoke about, we started hearing about the departures of most of his senior staff, his chief of staff, his campaign officials, advertising officials. They all quit. Now, presumably they could be brought back in with a new leader, but that's all up in the air right now. Safe to say that there is considerable confusion about what, Anne-Marie, is going to happen next.
Yeah, I will say we'll continue to follow that throughout the day. And just as a point of clarification, they resigned because he wouldn't resign, although he has now resigned. So it'll be interesting to see if they come back. And of course, we'll follow that and all the angles to the story. Glenn, good to talk to you this morning from Ottawa. Lindsay has the rest of your morning headlines. Thanks.
Anne-Marie, thank you. So just hours before the Ontario Conservative leader resigned, the PC leader in Nova Scotia was forced to step down over allegations of inappropriate behavior. Jamie Bailey was the provincial Tory leader for 8 years, but the party launched an investigation after a person came forward with these claims last month. It concluded Bailey had breached the legislature's workplace harassment policy. No further details have been released. Patrick Brown has resigned as Ontario's opposition leader after a CTV News exclusive about allegations of sexual misconduct. He made the announcement just after 1:30 this morning. In a statement, Brown says in part, "After consulting with caucus, friends and family, I have decided to step down as leader of the Ontario PC party. I will remain on as MPP while I definitively clear my name from these false allegations." The move came just hours after a late-night news conference where he denied the allegations. Let's talk about this right now with CTV's senior political correspondent, Glenn McGregor. Glenn, good to chat with you again this morning. Let's talk about the allegations. What can you tell us detail-wise?
Well, they were brought by two separate women, both of them young women at the time of the incidents when they met Brown. One of them was an employee of his who worked in his constituency office. She was a first-year university student working a summer job. Part of her job was organizing a big hockey charity event in Barrie that summer. And after the hockey game, there was a party at a nightclub, which then moved to Mr. Brown's home. Lots of people there, lots of alcohol flowing, according to the young woman. She said she became quite intoxicated and Brown invited her and a male friend of his into his bedroom to look at some photographs. The friend left, and that's when she says that he tried to kiss her and climb on top of her, even though she had no interest in that and felt very uncomfortable by that. She told him that she had a boyfriend and asked to be driven home, and he did. The other allegations are from about 10 years ago. A woman who was in high school at the time, but who was out drinking underage in a Barrie bar when she met Brown through a friend. The three of them went back to Brown's home, she says, and Brown offered to give her a tour of the house. And it was in the course of the tour of the house that they went into his bedroom. She says he closed the bedroom door and lowered his pants and asked her to perform oral sex on him, which she did briefly before quickly leaving the home. And it's important to note these allegations have never been proved in court. There was never any complaint to police or anyone else, never any civil action. And Brown emphatically denies it. Even as he announced his resignation last night, he says he denies these allegations. He considers them to be false and defamatory.
Let's talk about where we go from here, really. Patrick Brown, as we know, has resigned as leader, but he says that he wants to stay on as MPP. In your opinion, is that feasible?
I guess that'll be up to voters in the riding that he's running in the Barrie area in June. It's unclear to me from his statement whether or not he intends to seek re-election. He just said he would stay on as MPP. I guess that will ultimately be, for his potential constituents to decide whether they want to send him back to Queen's Park. But it's pretty clear that members of his own caucus deciding last night that they did not feel that he could, based on these allegations, continue on as leader. And I guess the question now is, how is the party going to handle this? They've got to move very quickly, a little over 4 months until the election in Ontario, and in that time they've got to choose a new leader who can lead them on the election campaign. So they're going to have to act very quickly, and I expect to hear more from the party apparatus sometime today.
Glenn, I want to ask you about the two women who have made these allegations. Since the resignation happened, just hours ago, have we heard anything from them?
Well, our staff are in contact, and I wouldn't want to get into too much detail about that. They told their story to us, and we did our due diligence checking out a lot of the key details from their stories, and I think that's all I'd want to say about that.
All right, Glenn McGregor, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much for joining us. All right, just hours before that happened, the Ontario Conservative leader Patrick Brown resigning, the PC leader in Nova Scotia was forced to step down over allegations of inappropriate behavior. Jamie Bailey was the provincial Tory leader for 8 years, but the party launched an investigation after a person came forward with the claims last month. It concluded Bailey had breached the legislature's workplace harassment policy. No further details have been released.